A couple of updates. Maybe you knew, maybe you didn't. Carrie Campbell had been admitted to the hospital yesterday, I think it was. But he got word. I talked to him via text today, and he sounded very groggy and sounded a little bit asleep. So I just wouldn't bother him any further and keep him in your prayers that he will attune to this thing. At least there's no big surgeries for his heart right now, but there's little tiny arteries in there that are not functioning completely the way that they should. I think Daryl's on the road. I knew he was trying to get here, but he's got some things going on. But it's good to have you here. Thank you for being here. Again, you get to put up with me tonight, and that's a good thing to, I think about. So, this thing behind me, take a look at it. I found it somewhere, and it seemed to be something that looked like it would fit. Motivating, worthy perhaps of getting a chance to look something like that over. And I thought, this is one of those things when people say, I'm your biggest fan. I would fight for you. Guys, I got a feeling looking around the room, they're not going to fight very hard for you, but maybe they will. Unconditionally, I give you my love. And I thought the very last part of that sentence, or the last sentence, was, I will love you unconditionally because you're my spouse. And I love that because it gives us a little bit of where we're going to be going tonight. Some last week said that probably one of the R's should be, what was that, Paul?
I don't know which one.
Regret, revenge. But I've already told you what it's going to be like, so it's not going to be one of those two, and we'll get into that. We had respect last week, and as we talk about all these seasons, keep in mind, this happens even when we're younger and we're dating and we're looking for that right person, and we think about all of these seasons that we're going to get into, and it's important for us, no matter how long we've been married, to realize these are things that Carrie has talked about, and Daryl has, and Kenny has, and so I want us to be thinking primarily about that tonight. But anyhow, if I can use this clicker right, Wright says both men and women marry to be taken care of. Now I want you to think back. Is that why you got married? I asked that question last week, and I got to thinking about it this week. There was a certain amount, I think, in my mind that, okay, let's get married so you can take care of me. I need somebody to cook for me. I need somebody to wash and to take care of food. I don't know. That really wasn't what I was thinking, but I think Wright says some view marriage as a safety net into which they will gladly fall. We either see it or we imagine it in the other person. Now remember, this book was written in 1982, and there are some differences today and some things that are viewed differently by everybody, because that's not the case if we were to go around the room and try to figure all of that out. Let me go to this one. Wright had this in his book, and I found the cartoon, and I thought it was just one of those things that I just had to put out there on you. Romance happens. When? When he whispers a sentence in French, even though she knows it's only a line from a souffle? Well, you know what I mean, recipe. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried that, but it's a good way to go if you haven't, so keep that in mind. Before we get into the class tonight, let's have a word of prayer and we'll begin. God, how thankful we are that we turn to you with so many things. There are some things that perhaps we even do in our lives that are not good, and others that we think and are not good, but yet I think among us here there are people who look to you with so many good things in mind, and we thank you for our health, for our families, for the nourishment we get from food, for the freedoms that we have. Father, tonight as we think about marriage, help us to realize and recognize what romance is throughout cultures all over the world, but also what romance is to us no matter what age or season that we are in. Father, I pray especially for Kerry as he is ill and with some heart problems, and we know that you will comfort and care for he and Jen and keep them in your loving hands. Lot will be traveling. This is a Memorial Day holiday, and so we pray for any who are on the road. Give them safety as they travel. Watch over us through the night and keep us in your loving hands. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. This is our number two, romance. Let's talk about romance in our marriage. Wright wrote a book in 1987 that was entitled Romancing Your Marriage. He says that cultural styles of romance differ throughout the world. Now I'm going to listen to some of these when I flash them up here, and keep in mind these may have changed since 1987. I'm not sure. It's a distance. But some of these you're going to say, and we allow Chinese fire drills going on all the time. So, anybody else want to change? Some of these may have changed, but listen, and you're going to say, I can't believe that happened in a romantic way, okay? So grab a hold of your seat. Let's go. So if you were an Olambra tribesman in Africa and wanted to be married, a wife could be purchased for 4 dogs. What's that do to your human wealth? In the Kamti caste of Balampur, India, a girl is purchased in a marriage market at the rate of 100 rupees. I think in looking that up, that's a penny. A penny is a rupee. So 100 pennies makes, are you ready? It makes $1. And so if this girl is 7 years old, they're going to buy her for $7. I tried to get 70 out of it, but anyhow, but when she reaches the ripe age of 10, she's considered old and worthless, and she's available free to anyone who wants her. What would this do to your self-esteem? Again, don't know how solid these are, but we're getting better as we go. The Upper Nile Valley. The Akoli tribe have a strange courtship custom which may have some merit. Women must marry their husbands 3 times before this contract is considered legal. The 3 successive ceremonies are designed to protect men from making a hasty decision. There was another one I didn't put up here. It was from Scotland, and I may have to dig that one out at some point, but it was interesting about walking on a cliff, and if you got too close, you fell down, but if you did, well, never mind. The Lodi, this was a good one. The Lodi caste of Hoshangabad, India, I hope I got that right, will allow a bachelor to marry a widow if he first marries a pair of earrings. He wears this strange wife on his ears for 1 year, and then he may divorce the earrings and marry the widow. How did somebody conjure all these things up, to know that this really happens? Now, I have looked these up, and I think they have changed since 1987, so wives, you don't have to worry about him doing anything like this to you or vice versa. But romance is very difficult to define from culture to culture and from person actually to person. Wright says romance is difficult to define because it's not a science or an art form. Romance is composed of fantasy, emotion, non-rational delights. It's a special time or event for 2 individuals. Now, do seasons of a marriage ever end? Should they end? I didn't put this in where it says participation is appreciated, but there'll be some of those coming up. But you know, as I think about this question that he provided, it's my belief that romance must be an active part of all marriages. Here's the key: till death do us part. A good friend of mine passed away about a month ago back in Parkersburg. I roomed with him for a year at Lipscomb. He later went on to become a preacher. He preached for us, as a matter of fact, at our congregation back there for about 20 years. He had reoccurring cancer, and it first started in the upper roof of his mouth. And for a preacher, that was very difficult for him to overcome, but he did, and he was one of the best, one of my favorite preachers who did that. It got to the point about a month ago, well, he had a stroke along the way too, but it became evident he wasn't going to be living very much longer. And they were the people that bought our house when we moved out here, which we were very thankful for, because it certainly eased our mind about getting the house sold and getting out here. My understanding is that as he lay on his deathbed, he sent his oldest daughter out to get flowers. And when he came back, or she came back, she handed him to her father, and he handed him to Jean, his wife. This was their 53rd wedding anniversary day. And as he dropped his hands from handing him to her and closed his eyes, he passed away. Now, I'm hoping to see him in that spiritual world at the end, because I have a notion he's going to say to me, well, I handed him to her with love in my heart, and I said, till death do us part. Touching story, but I think it's one in which we take a look at this and we say romance never ends. Romance continues on in different facets of the seasons that we live in. Mitchell Qualls, another author that I read from this past week, said romance is the ongoing mission of making your spouse feel special. Let that marinate within you for a minute. This is what it's all about. So the question is, what is romance? We've been defining a lot of words over the past 3 months, but when we get to this and we need to define what romance is, Qualls says the following 4 things. He says, first of all, there is no one answer. Each couple is different. Each person is different. Our expectations are different. And so what may mean this is romantic to me, you'll say, no, that's not romantic for us. So there is no one answer. He says, to make them know what makes them feel, and I like this one, but it makes them feel special, you have to be a student of your spouse. Have you ever thought about that before? A student of your spouse. I think Kay's been trying to study me for 53 years, and I'm not quite sure she's ever found out what makes this body and mind tick. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I say that I'm just a tough guy to figure out what's going on. When am I going to be cranky? When am I going to be happy? When am I going to buy you this or sell that or whatever? She didn't like it that I bought a Corvette. But she was happy when I sold it, and we were happy when I sold it, and those are things that come about. Now, romance is a lifestyle, he says. It's not confined to one day in February. Now, let me repeat that. It is not confined to one day in February. It's a daily choice to be selfless and put your spouse first. It's intentional, and it's not expecting, here's a key, it's not expecting anything in return. You see, here's the way it goes. It grows every day. It grows every year. Beyond the difficulties, beyond the losses, beyond the riches, what your marriage vows had to tell you. And finally, you need to be a lifelong learner of your spouse. That's important. Part of a lifetime learner is discovery. What do they enjoy? What do they desire? What's their dreams all about? What makes them feel loved? I love a class like this because as I look around on this, you can see, maybe you've not been up in front, but you see the wheels turning. You see the elbows jabbing. You feel the ouch as they get it in the rib right where they needed to get it. So, how does romance look in your marriage? Class interaction, talk please. I'll make it easy for you. If you were being given a letter grade, A, B, C, D, E, F, we won't go any further than that, what grade would you get? And it can be a joint effort here. I almost felt like I should have given you a piece of cardboard, had you write this one down and hold it up under nobody's seeing that. I didn't even ask her that today. But I would give you, from my standpoint, as far as me being romantic, I'm a B minus. That's B as in boy, not D minus. B as in boy. B minus.
Why minus?
Pardon me?
Why minus?
Well, I didn't want a C plus. I'll take that little minus sign. There are things I probably should be more attuned to when it comes to romanticness. I think the older you get, sometimes you get to know one another, and it maybe is not as pointed as what it once was. There have been times when on anniversaries we've taken off and we've done some things. This is AK, okay, after kids have grown up. But there have been some things that we have done for each other, and I'll explain those here in just a few moments. But I guess there are things I look back on and say, I forgot. I should have done this or that. Any brave volunteers as to where you are with a grade on this?
How do you put this into practice when you can't even talk to her? And then you go home and there's no one there.
Okay. I think that's a good question. How do you put this into practice when you go home and no one's there? It may be that your desire is to find someone who someday will be there, and then it's a matter of saying, funny as this may seem, I used to keep a log of things that I wanted to say to her at specific times. And so I don't know if you're into writing things down, but it comes to a point when sometimes you're speechless. And so there's not a real good time for things to happen. Sometimes you have to make it happen. And other times it just, the providence of God, it does happen.
What if that log is 20 years long?
He said, what if that log is 20 years long? Let me give you an example. There was a young lady back in Parkersburg again. Sorry for the personal thoughts. She grew up with us. She was about 10 years younger, but she was single, wanted a husband, quiet, a little bit shy, was quite an artist. She could really draw. We found out a year ago she's getting married. 63 years old, happy as can be, marrying a guy who's 60-ish, same age. He's never been married. And they have found each other. She was such a patient girl. And she had such a delightful personality, but yet it was a quiet personality. And we just kept thinking, praying, and thinking, this is going to happen someday. But it's not for you to decide when that is. It's for God to help you to find that person that you're going to have. And the last thing we had heard, they were very happily married and going into their second or third year. And it was really a delightful story that I love telling about people who think it's got to be now. No, it doesn't have to be now, but it will take time for some people. And when she had that happen to her, I got to thinking, let's see, her 25th wedding anniversary will be when she's 87. You know, will she make 50? I don't know. Kay Tolman, she was just a really just a neat person. Let me give you some thoughts. Kenny, let me ask you to tell the story.
Okay. I had a friend from growing up, and he set the bar really high. I don't know that I would ever accomplish anything like this. But on their anniversary, he got up early in the morning, and he took a card that he had prepared and put it by his wife's alarm clock. And he leaves, disappears. She, her alarm goes off, she gets up, opens the card, oh, happy anniversary, you're gonna have an adventure today, and said your first stop is their favorite little tea house. So she goes to the tea house, she gets all, gets dressed and fixed up. She goes to the tea house, and they've got a table set for her, reserved for her, and they greeted her. Yeah, have a seat, we'll be right out with your muffin and your tea. And he comes out and he gives her a card. And so she opens the card, and the next stop is to go to the florist. And so she goes to the florist, and they presented her with flowers and give her another card. And said, they're supposed to go to a bookstore, and there was a book that had just been published that she was looking forward to getting, but she hadn't bought it yet. So she goes to, it said on the card, just walk in and tell them who you are. And they said, oh yeah. And they had a book. The book she was waiting to get was there behind the counter, and they handed it to her, and she opened it up, and here's another card. Well, you don't have time to read right now, but you'll have time later. For the next leg of your adventure, you need to go home. And so she goes home, and her father-in-law is waiting in the driveway. And he said, hop in, I gotta take you somewhere. Where are we going? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you yet. So he drives her to the airport and gives her a ticket to fly to Dallas Love. And she said, I don't even have a suitcase. That's okay, your husband's already packed it for you. I would never dare to do that. So he gets the suitcase out of the trunk, she goes in, gets on the airplane, she flies down to Dallas. And this was way back before TSA and everything. And so she gets off the plane, and before TSA, you could go down to the arrival gate and greet your loved ones as they get off the plane. And so here's her husband standing there with a sign, welcome to love. So.
Now, I hope that didn't get any of you guys in trouble. But there will be a card waiting for you at the next anniversary that probably you're going to have to take advantage of and do something with. I just thought that was a great story. I have never done a scavenger hunt with her. I'm not sure it would last because I'm not sure how adventurous I would be with doing something like that. But I thought there's all kinds of things that all you have to do is be just a little bit creative and look what may have happened with that particular arrangement or any other one along the way. But here's some of my comments. It's not quite as effective as what Kenny's friend was, and I'm probably going to get in trouble here. So I want you to know that I'm not thinking of anybody in particular. I am not trying to blame you or show guilt with you, but there are things we can all do. Thoughtful cards, notes, cups of coffee. When Kay worked down at the quilt store, and I was part-time as well, every once in a while it would come to my mind that I bet she would really like a cup of coffee this morning. And I would go all out. I went to McDonald's. I went to McDonald's and I got her a cup of coffee, a senior cup of coffee. And I'd walk in and I'd hand it to her, and she'd say, "Thank you, I really like this." And we'd even hug in the store, and I don't know, I may have gotten a peck on the cheek or something. But at any rate, these are the kind of things, treats and so forth. Now, here's where I get into trouble. Guys, every once in a while, set the table, wash the dishes. And I don't mean the dishwasher kind, but there is a sink in most every kitchen. And I catch myself. In fact, tonight I tried, and she shooed me away and said, no, I've got this. But clean the house. Pick up after yourself. Soft music maybe is a little romantic, but it can work. Now, soft music may be after the kids, but you'll get the idea. And finally, maybe even dinner prepared. Now, no peanut butter sandwiches. This has got to be a little more formal than peanut butter sandwiches. TV dinners are okay. Leftovers are okay. But I think what she likes to see is you're doing something special for me. No matter how flat the dinner is or how unsalted anything is, I think she's going to like that. Surprise gifts, Saturday surprise road trips. I don't know how many times. This again, BK, you know what that is, before kids, or AK, GU, after kids grow up. This is some nice times, and I will say to her, let's just drive up to Branson. There's nice quilt stores up there. There's a chance just to get away, some great restaurants, and off we shuffle to Branson.
What about us? We don't fit in either one of those.
You don't do, well then you get to create your own. Yeah. I'm not giving you much time tonight because I'm running out of the time, but we'll run, we've run over different places, and she wants to go to Hennessy. There's a quilt shop up there. I know. Remember last week I told you the cookies are in the back? I always find some place to go to eat when we go these directions. And there are some neat mom and pop restaurants that we found, haven't we, Kelly, when we go golfing or whatever. So, what if you could do just 3 things that would revamp, recharge, and romance your marriage? I'm trying to keep this simple for all of you. There's not a big 9-page whatever. Would you be willing to build on these 3 things? 3 things. Don't shake your head because you'll be guilty of not doing them later on. Just think in your minds, would I do these? First thing, this is from Chris Ownby. He's another author back in 2020, way back there. He said, first of all, take care of yourself. Now, what's that mean? Right off the bat, that sounds a little counterintuitive, possibly even a little selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking. Here's the thing. We spend, husbands, wives, male, females, we spend so much time on the job that by the time we get home, we're spent. I'm tired. I don't want to do anything romantic. We get home, and all you're leaving with your spouse are the leftovers. Maybe it's not quite leftovers, but you're tired. You want to connect with each other, but the wheels have come off. There's nothing left to romance with at the end of the day. And my only advice to you is work less and appreciate more. Now, I don't mean for you not to put in your hours that day, but somehow find a way that you can come home and refresh yourself. There were some times when all I needed was a Coke or something along the way as I came home, and that really helped. So you'll know what to do when you get there. So take care of yourself. Second, take pride in yourselves. Folks, you know this as well as anybody, but we live in a casual world. And I'm probably one of the greatest that loves to just be casual. Just fly by the seat of your pants. Let me ask you this every once in a while just to dress up. I had an example I'm going to share with you when I was a principal of an elementary school. We got the bright idea that maybe what we needed to do was have a special day, a couple of them during the year, one a semester. Well, what are we going to call it? I had a nurse that was very intuitive with these things, and she said, well, let's call it Dress for Success. Dress for Success. And so I told the kids in an announcement, tomorrow is going to be a Dress for Success day, and this was 20, 25 years ago, and maybe you were one of those kids, I don't know. The parents loved it. Little boys would come in with a tie. Now, it was just a snap-on tie. Brought a tie and a nice dress shirt and came in. Now, this was a no playground day. And you know why, don't you? We're not going out there with a tie and a nice shirt on and getting the mud. So we're inside for recess and all of those kind of things. The little girls came in with a church dress on. Well, what did we prove by doing all of this? I don't know if these can be documented, and if they sound right, good. If they don't, then ignore them. I think, first of all, they were proud of their appearance. They came into that school, and I stood in the hallway watching them go by, these big smiles on their face. There was nothing like, look what I had to dress in today. And they just came in. They really looked good, and this was a school day. If I remember right, they seemed to behave better and treat others more politely during the day. What you see is what you get. I'm going to be just a little, yes. They actually used the words yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Couldn't believe it. Excuse me. They used all these fancy little words that I didn't even know first graders knew. And we went on with this. And this is the one that the teachers came to me. They said, you know, when we do this, the kids seem to do better on their schoolwork if they're dressed for success. I said, well, proof's in the pudding, and it worked out that maybe that did happen, maybe it didn't. But what I want to say is that they really felt better about themselves. They tuned into things much better. Wright finally says this: another real turnoff for both men and women is a partner who is physically out of shape. Now, let's keep this in perspective, folks, okay? Everybody has their own idea of what physically keeping in shape is. When we got married on August the 30th, 1969, I weighed 175 pounds. I played baseball, football. I was into it all. Kept myself in shape. I looked pretty good, honestly. Isn't that what you told me to say? Okay. Well, this will be even maybe harder. By Thanksgiving of that same year, I weighed 240 pounds. Well, here was the problem. I ate her lunch because I didn't want her to feel bad. I ate her lunch, but when I got to school and they had those hot rolls that were just, the smell of them made me want a dozen of them. I didn't get a dozen, but I started, it was so bad when I smiled, my eyes went shut. And somewhere along the line, I said, I've got to do something. This is just not right. And she said, you're right. That's not right. So I went on this, get physically in shape again. Let's get out, let's walk. Well, a few years passed, anyhow. The long story short was, we have finally still kept that up. And we're up most of the time at 5:30 in the morning. Well, she's up at 5:30 in the morning. I wait until 5:35. And then we get up, and normally we walk 2 to 3 miles. But again, this has happened all here when we didn't have the responsibility of the kids being still in the house. All I'm saying is, somewhere find a place that you can really feel good about taking care of yourself. And if you're doing that right now, good for you. Now let me back up. The second key, besides taking care of yourself, is have realistic, got to hurry with this one, realistic expectations of your spouse. John Gottman said, another writer, he said, be good friends. I added, be best friends. Do what friends do. Go have fun with your spouse. Let people know that that's the case. Trust one another. Carry each other through the troubled waters. There's going to be some times when you and your spouse don't necessarily get along and have the right political ideas. So what you have to do is just get each other through. Be fully committed to each other. My eyes are for her only. Her only. I think in the world we live, that's not the case with many, many marriages. Have a satisfying sex life. No details here. That's your picture. Well, but I will say, before we got married, one of the books that somebody gave us, do you remember who gave that to us? Oh, okay. It's not on there. Was The Art of Marriage. And maybe you have heard of it and read it. I don't care where you are in your marriage, it's still a good book. It may be out of print at this point, but The Art of Marriage. Just enjoy each other's touch. Finally, he says, manage conflict constructively. Look for answers and solutions. I think too often we look at the problem and we don't find the solution that we need to find in our marriage. Now, the final thing, that was the first bell. The third point was pursue your spouse. Now, that is not stalking her. Remember the feeling that you first had? Now, this neat little thing here by Owensby. He says, there's a good reason you had these feelings. Research indicates that the newness of romantic attraction causes a neurochemical called, you read it, I'm not going to attempt it, but PEA, to squirt through your brain, causing feelings of heightened romance, physical attraction, and physical emotional energy. And it motivated you to keep on pursuing your spouse. Now, the great news is that it's not rocket science. And it doesn't take an insurmountable amount of effort to keep the wheels rolling and get the PEA squirting again. Regularly pursue conversation, have curiosity about your spouse, pursue romance and new experiences, pursue laughter, pursue fun, pursue connections too, and continue to be curious about their dreams, their likes, their dislikes, and their goals. We're going to quit. I had one or two more things, and I'll put these up here next time because I think Wright brings everything to a conclusion. And I want to do that before we get in. We've got 1 week left. Don't you dare miss next week. We'll be taking attendance. There is no test. You all passed. And I hope that you'll be here. I know this is a big weekend, Memorial Day, but I hope you'll be back and in town. I'll keep the subject quiet for right now, but we'll have a good time next week taking a look at things, okay? Thank you for your thoughts, your comments, your smiles. I really worried about this one, but be romantic with one another. I challenge you to walk out of this room holding her hand tonight. Let's see what happens.